The Night of the Ashen Rose. Chapter 1. Dance with Fire. The air in the throne room of the Castle of the Sun's Whisper was thick with the scents of rose water, beeswax, and expensive perfumes. Hundreds of candles reflected off the marble polish to a mirror shine, their light fracturing in the golden embroidery on the noble's doublets and in the lady's jewels. But all this splendor faded for Knight Leoric the moment he saw her. Lady Eleanor stood by a tall, arched window, beyond which stretched the star-dusted twilight. She was the daughter of the Duke, the flower of the kingdom, and the rumors of her beauty did not lie. Her copper hair, braided in an intricate plait, seemed to absorb the light of every candle in the hall. Her eyes, the color of spring foliage, looked upon the noisy crowd with a faint, almost invisible sadness. In her hands, she twirled an unopened bud of a scarlet rose. Leoric, clad in ceremonial armor with his family crest, a rampant griffin on an azure field, felt like a clumsy bear amidst this elegant bustle. He was a knight not by birth, but by merit. His title and lands had been granted by the king for his bravery in battles against the orcs of the Ash Mountains. His world consisted of the clang of steel, the whistle of arrows, and the rough humor of his brothers in arms. Here he was an outsider, and yet some unknown force, stronger than fear or reason, made him step forward. He crossed the hall, and the crowd parted before him, growing quiet. He stopped before Eleanor, and the silence around them became deafening. "My lady," his voice, accustomed to giving commands on the battlefield, sounded unexpectedly soft. "Might I dare to ask you for this dance?" Eleanor looked up at him. The surprise in her eyes gave way to curiosity, and then to a spark of mockery. "Knight Leoric, is it not? Vanquisher of trolls and tamer of griffins. Are you certain your sword won't hinder you in leading a pavane?" Her words could have stung, but Leoric held his ground. "My sword knows its place, my lady, and right now its place is at my hip. But my hands—" He paused, looking straight into her green eyes. "My hands remember more than just the weight of a hilt." She measured him with a long look, then unexpectedly smiled. It was not a social, practiced smile, but a genuine one, warming everything around it. "Very well, let us see, knight." Their dance became the legend of that evening. The initially somewhat rough Leoric, under Eleanor's guidance, found incredible grace. They didn't speak a word, merely swirling to the gentle music of the lute. He felt the lightness of her hand in his, saw how sincerely her eyes shone, and understood he was lost. He had fallen in love with her the moment she, laughing, trustingly leaned against his breastplate, seeking refuge from the whirlwind of their dance. Chapter 2. A Garden Under the Stars. Their romance bloomed faster than a May rose. Secret meetings in the garden, hidden from the Duke's watchful eyes, became their world. Leoric, a man of action, discovered in himself a gift for storytelling. He described to her the snowy peaks of the dwarves, the singing dunes of the elven wastes, and the endless forests where ancient trees whispered with the wind. Eleanor, in turn, opened for him the world of books, poetry, and quiet, contemplative beauty. She taught him to listen to the silence between the notes and to see history in the worn stones of old fortress walls. "You see the sky, Leo," she said, sitting with him on the parapet of the old observatory. "And I see the stars. You fight to protect the land, and I want there to be a reason to live on this land." He gave her flowers, but not garden roses, wild, mountain ones that he found on dangerous slopes during patrols. She carefully dried them and kept them in her favorite book of ballads. His faithful squire, young Aller, the blacksmith's son, would just shake his head, watching his formidable master with a foolish smile, memorizing poems. "Is the sword heavy, my lord?" he would tease. "Heavier than your father's hammer, boy." "But words can sometimes be heavier than the strongest steel," Leoric would joke back. Even the old Magus Elmond, the king's advisor and Leoric's friend, looked upon their bond with paternal tenderness, hidden behind the severity of his bushy gray brows. "A heart given to another becomes the most vulnerable point in one's armor, Leoric," he would say, "but also the strongest teacher the knight would parry. For it, I will become invincible." The Duke, Eleanor's father was opposed. Noble blood against blood, spilled with sweat and earned in battle. But the king, who valued Leoric, gave his blessing. It seemed nothing could cloud their happiness. The wedding was set for the day of the summer solstice. Chapter 3. A shadow from the Ash Mountains. They came with the first snow. Not the orcs Leoric had fought. Something worse. From the depths of the Ash Mountains, from a world of eternal darkness and ancient magic, rose Malgar, the necromancer. His army was not among the living. They were the fallen warriors of all past battles, raised by dark art, soulless, tireless, knowing no fear. They brought not war, but the end of all things, a frost that bound the earth, and a silence in which there was no place for life. The royal standard called all its banners. Leoric was ordered to lead the vanguard and delay the enemy at the Black Pass while the king gathered the main army. The farewell with Eleanor was brief and bitter. They stood in the same observatory. "Return to me," she whispered, placing that very same dried bud of a wild rose into his hand. "Return alive." "I swear by my sword and my heart," he replied, kissing her goodbye. Her lips were cold from tears. His squire Aller, already clad in good, though simple, armor, waited below, holding the reins of Leoric's warhorse. "Will we win, my lord?" he asked, and his voice held a hope that was no longer childish. "We must," Leoric said firmly. Chapter 4. Steel and Despair. The Battle of the Black Pass was a frozen, silent hell. The dead marched in silence, uttering no war cry, only clattering bone against steel. They could not be stopped. They could only be hacked apart, and even then the fragments kept moving. Leoric fought like a demon. His sword, gleaming with Magus Elman's blessing, traced fiery arcs in the air, turning dozens of wights to ash. He was the rock upon which the dead wave broke. Beside him fought Aller, his shield more than once saving the knight's life. But the wave was endless. One after another, the kingdom's banners fell. Leoric's friends, veterans of dozens of skirmishes, fell, only to rise moments later with empty eye sockets, turning their sword against their former comrades. At the decisive moment, when it seemed the line was about to break, Leoric saw Malgar himself. The necromancer stood on a cliff, observing the slaughter, his black cloak merging with the ash falling from the sky. Whether it was madness of despair or reckless courage, Leoric did not know what drove him. He fought his way through the ranks of the dead, leaving Aller to cover his rear, and charged up the slope. He reached the cliff. Their battle was brief. Malgar's magic was strong, but Leoric's fury, fueled by love and oath, was stronger. He drove his sword into the heart of the darkness, and the necromancer fell with a cry, his body crumbling into black ash. But at the last moment, the dying Malgar whispered, "You have defeated a warrior knight, but not the idea. Death always takes its due. It will take everything you love." The army of the dead collapsed, turning to dust. Victory was Leoric's. Bleeding, he stood on the cliff and looked down at the valley littered with the bodies of his men. Among them, he did not see Aller. The young squire had fallen, defending his master's back. Chapter 5. Return to Ashes. Leoric returned to the capital a hero, but he was not met with triumph. The city greeted him with a tomb-like silence. Black banners flew from the towers. The plague, a strange, swift disease that had come with the frost Malgar brought. It spared no one, neither old nor young, neither noble nor poor. Leoric, without removing his bloodied armor, burst into the castle of the Sun's Whisper. He ran through the familiar corridors, but their walls were cold and empty. He rushed into Eleanor's chambers. Magus Elman stood by her bed. His face was sad and old. "I did all I could, Leoric. Magic is powerless against this pestilence. She waited for you until the end." Eleanor lay on the pillows, pale as marble. Her copper hair seemed tarnished. In her weak fingers, she clutched the book of ballads. Seeing him, she smiled weakly. "You returned." "I knew." He fell to his knees by the bed, grasping her hand. It was cold as ice. "I kept my oath. I returned, alive, and I will break mine." Her voice was barely audible, I will not be able to greet you." Her gaze fell on the book. Leoric opened it. On the page with the ballad of eternal love lay that very same dried bud. It crumbled at his touch, turning into a handful of ash. Her breathing stopped. The light left her green eyes. Leoric did not cry. He was numb. He buried her in the family crypt, next to the coffin of the Duke, who had also died of the plague. He was the last of his line. His castle, his lands, all were empty. His faithful squire, his teacher, his beloved, his king, all dead. The victory over Malgar had been Pyrrhic. He had saved the kingdom, but it had ceased to exist because there was no one left in it for whom it was worth living. Epilogue. The night of nothing. Years passed. The kingdom slowly healed its wounds. A new ruler ascended the throne. But in legends, a grim ghost remained, roaming the ruins of the castle of the Sun's Whisper. Leoric, once a proud knight, became a shadow. He lived in the ruins of his former glory, in the castle where everything reminded him of his loss. His armor, once gleaming, was covered in rust. His famous sword was thrown down a well. He spoke to no one. Only sometimes he was seen sitting on the stones of the old observatory, looking at the sky where the stars were, which he could no longer see. He did not age, as if Malgar's curse had touched him too, granting him eternal life in eternal suffering. He became an omen of trouble, the night of nothing, and travelers avoided his domain. One cold winter night, when the wind howled through the empty sockets of the castle like an army of ghosts, Leoric sat by a tiny fire in the fireplace of the former throne room. In his hand, he clutched a pinch of gray ash that had once been a rose. He remembered the dance, her smile, her laugh, her words, "I want there to be a reason to live on this land." He slowly lay down on the stone floor, gazing at the dark vaulted ceiling. He was cold, so cold. He closed his eyes, and it seemed to him that he could feel her hand in his again, hear the music of the lute. In the morning, travelers who had dared to pass through the valley found him. He lay with a smile frozen on his face, the first in many years. In his frozen hand was the ash, carried away by the wind. He had died alone, as he had lived all those years, defeated not by a sword, but by the silence that remained after the voices of all he had loved had fallen silent. Death, in the end, had taken its due.